time. It'll be here 10:30. Nobody's happy about it, but it is what it is.
So that means that we don't go to the dealership on Friday?
Janet's trying to get her to change it. She wouldn't do it. She got conflict somewhere. So, figured it out. Okay, we left off on 78, right? We should be on oxygen sensors. We gotta go to, 85 this week, yeah. Okay. After this week, then, we got one more week of school. Is that exciting?
Yes.
Don't have to go to me anywhere? That's always fun, right? How'd the dealer go? Everybody do all right?
It's alright.
Because you went over to Honda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything worked out okay over there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, every place has its pros and cons.
Every place is different.
Yeah. I like it, just that I don't like taking the tires off all high and I'm on my tippy toes.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't know why these guys that do this every day can't figure out that if you gotta do a tire rotation or a oil change or whatever on a car,
It's gotta be,
whatever order they wanna do it in,
yeah.
put the car at, at arm level to
Yeah.
do the tire rotation. I mean, it's stupid to do that.
One thing I hate at Subaru, they have to like put it all the way up here, I'm going like this.
Yeah.
And then going down, then I have to lift.
It doesn't make any sense. It takes 2 seconds to lower the rack down to,
I have to like whip it on my shoulder and just.
Yeah, it just-
That makes it easier for me.
I would just
Because if you get.
say, look, I'm gonna drop it down to, cause,
I like how they do it at Honda.
This one Subaru came with big tires, like truck tires.
oh yeah, Yeah.
I like lifted and I picked it up. It's over my head.
Yep.
I'm trying to put it on, I'm struggling because I can't find it.
right.
This tire is heavy, I have to put it down.
Yeah, you're trying to line up the lug nuts with.
Yeah.
I'm perfect.
I
Yeah.
thought it was standard to have it.
Well, the thing is with Honda, you don't get probably many vehicles in there with big tires on them though.
Yes, the hell
Do
we
ya?
do.
Really?
Yeah. We just had a GMC truck the other day.
Okay, well, you're just a strong man, I guess. But what about poor little Tiffany?
What about me?
She can't lift those big tires
Don't
over her head.
underestimate
We
me.
were at Chevy.
Huh?
Don't underestimate me.
I don't underestimate.
No, I don't like that. You made that mistake before.
I was just assuming you weren't as strong as the guy, but maybe I'm wrong. You are, huh?
Ask Joe.
Yeah, we were at Chevy when they bring those big trucks in.
She handled it, huh?
She tried.
Good for you. Okay. All right. I hope that doesn't mess up anybody too bad on that graduation, but there's nothing I can do about it. So we will have only one missed day for this last part, but we'll still have plenty of time. We would have got it done before, but all right. Get your exhaust hooked up on that car? You're not waking up the neighbors anymore? I bet they're a lot happier with you.
I miss the sound, man, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Probably runs better too. Usually does run better when you actually have an exhaust system on your car. All right. What do we know about oxygen sensors? Before we get started, what do you know about them?
Is there more than one always, usually?
There's always more than one.
Yeah.
You need that shit to work so you can smell your car.
One of the most important sensors there is on the car, after it goes into closed loop. Anybody heard what that is? You know what that is?
What?
Into what?
Closed loop.
No.
You know what that is? No? Okay, you will shortly. What that means is, when you first start a car cold, it's in mode what they call open loop, which means the PCM is not looking at the oxygen sensor for input, okay? Because the oxygen sensor doesn't work until it warms up. So the signal from the oxygen sensor is worthless to the PCM until the car warms up, okay? That's why they heat the oxygen sensors. Remember we talked about that? Remember that test question that said something about an oxygen sensor having 4 wires? And the answer was, this sensor has a heater circuit in it, okay? The reason they do that is because they want to get that oxygen sensor hot and get it working as quick as possible. Once that oxygen sensor starts working, the vehicle will go into what they call a closed loop, which means at that point, the PCM is taking the input from the oxygen sensor for fuel delivery calculations, okay? In open loop, it is not using it. So it does, the oxygen sensor does nothing at startup for a couple of minutes. It typically goes into closed loop pretty quick. Okay? Okay, we're gonna go through types, uses for it, the methods that can be tested, and symptoms of a failed oxygen sensor. Post-catalytic converter, oxygen sensor, operation of a wideband sensor, dual cell, wideband, single cell. Describe wideband oxygen sensor pattern failures. Okay, one of your oxygen sensors, or maybe 2 of them, depending on your engine configuration, is going to be strictly monitoring the catalyst efficiency. Okay, those is what they call sensor 2, or the post-catalyst oxygen sensor. Okay?
Is there a legal in Vegas to straight pipe and give it?
Is there a who?
Legal
No.
to straight pipe your car in Vegas?
Is it legal to do that?
Yeah, take all the cats out,
Mhm.
converters, take all of it. You pass them on, no problem.
Yep, won't pass smoke, yeah. If you take the catalytic converters off, it won't pass smoke.
What about the check engine lights on? How would they know? When you get smaller, you take to those, those booths, because that's
Mhm.
smaller. You just plug it in, as long as the computer says no check engine light, everything good. That means they wouldn't know.
But the check engine light's gonna be on. You take the catalytic converters off, the check engine light's gonna come on.
Yeah.
It's gonna come on within probably 10 minutes of driving. Because you have no input from the oxygen sensor anymore. If you take the catalytic converter off, you got no input from your post-catalyst oxygen sensor because it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't see that signal, it's gonna turn the check engine light on. You can set up B0420, 430, catalyst below threshold or inefficient.
You can get it tuned to not read though.
What's that?
You can get it tuned to not read though.
You can, but that's not legal either. But that doesn't mean people don't do it.
So the smart won't figure out you have to tune it, plug the LG sensor in, right?
I don't think the smog machines will detect that. But I will tell you, if the car happens to be under warranty, and you have some sort of engine failure or something like that, you take it in and get it fixed, they will deny the claim. You voided your warranty. Because what they do is they pull the calibration codes out of the car before they can okay an engine repair. And if the calibration codes have been changed, there's no warranty anymore. So if the car is already out of warranty, do what you want to do. But if it's under warranty, it will void the warranty. They will not do anything for you. Okay? Uses for the oxygen sensor in the exhaust stream is to measure the exhaust content of the exhaust. Conventional zirconia oxygen sensors only be able to detect exhaust richer or leaner than 14.7 to 1, which we know is the proper air-fuel ratio for gasoline, right? So this test question on the test, it was talked about ethanol and gasoline. Most of you got that right, I think. Ethanol is 9 to 1, gasoline's 14.7 to 1. Everybody did pretty good on the test. We just need to keep that up for 2 more weeks, okay? We'll get everybody through this. All right, typical zirconia oxygen sensor has the sensing element in the shape of a thimble, and therefore it's often referred to as the thimble design. Concentration of the exhaust on the exhaust side, we don't have to worry too much about that. This is gonna get into technical things about how the sensor works, and what you need to know is the basics of it, how it affects the engine performance, what the voltage is supposed to be, what's rich, what's lean, that kind of stuff. So a lot of this stuff we're not going to worry too much about because again it gets into deep technical side that's really not going to do you much good and you probably won't remember anyway. Here's how the oxygen sensors are configured. When they originally came out on cars, they only had one wire. All that was a signal wire to the PCM. There was no ground wire. It used the ground of the engine, because when it screwed into the exhaust manifold, there's your ground, so it just had one wire. And then they decided they were gonna put a ground wire on them, so then they came out with a 2-wire design. And then the 3-wire started putting heaters in them for the 3 and 4 wire. So you know what the heater circuit and the oxygen sensor is for, right? We talked about that a minute ago. What's it for? Why is there a heater circuit in the oxygen sensor? We just talked about it 10 minutes ago. Come on, you can remember that far back,
It
can you?
has to get up to a certain temperature to
Okay,
detect
because the oxygen sensor doesn't work until it gets to a certain temperature. If they put a heater circuit in it, it heats it up quicker. It doesn't have to wait for the exhaust stream to heat it up. Okay, starts working quicker. All right, conventional O2 sensors require 0.8 to 2 amps for the heater circuit, a wide band, 8 to 10 amps.
So if the guy with the video is not working, it's probably,
That is something you might want to remember. What's that?
so if your fella converter has to check engine now, but if you check your tally converter,
Uh-huh.
you don't see the O2 sensor, the oxygen sensor.
Could it be the oxygen sensor? It could be. It's possible. Normally, if you get a catalyst code, P0420 or 430 for a catalyst below threshold or inefficient, normally the converter is bad, but it's possible the oxygen sensor is.
I recently had that problem,
Mm-hmm.
and when the car has 2 oxygen sensors, can it pinpoint which of the 2, or when
Absolutely,
it
it can.
has 4?
Yep,
Pin-
yep.
Exactly the one that it is.
Yep, yep. It will say sensor 1 or sensor 2. This is always upstream, this is always downstream. This is catalyst monitoring, this is engine control. Okay, it will tell you which one it is, okay? Okay. Wideband oxygen sensor heater, 8 to 10 amps to heat it to 400 degrees. Okay, this is a picture of exhaust manifold looking up at it. We obviously with the exhaust pipe disconnected. You can show you the oxygen sensor kind of comes through there. And it sniffs the oxygen content of the exhaust as the exhaust passes by there. Turns it into a voltage that the PCM reads and interprets as is the car running rich or lean. Okay, this is important to remember. If the exhaust stream is lean, it's going to have a low voltage. Typically below 450 millivolts. Because the range of an oxygen sensor is basically 0 to 1 volt. Okay, or 1,000 millivolts, same thing. If the exhaust stream is rich, you can guess where we're going with this, right? It's going to be a high voltage. It's going to be above probably 500 millivolts. We'll call 450 to 500 the baseline or the middle of the road, right? Not really rich, not really lean. Okay? This is where your fuel trim numbers come from. It's basically just a history of the oxygen sensor voltage. Okay? And based on that, it will add or subtract fuel to compensate. Try to keep the air-fuel ratio at the proper 14.7 to 1 all the time. Yeah.
So basically, if it's sitting right at that 450, it's working perfectly.
No, it should never be steady.
It should never be steady.
Never.
Okay.
So, when the engine's running, if you were to look at the voltage on a scope, and this was 0 this was 1 volt, and this was a half a volt, or your 450 millivolts, you call it. That voltage should be doing this all the time, constantly back and forth. If it stays at one spot, doesn't matter where it is, something's wrong. Okay, it doesn't mean the sensor's bad, it just means something's wrong.
So what would it mean if it was sitting at one the whole time, like one number the whole time? Is it's not running or simple?
Normally, if it's stuck in the middle, say here, not really moving, normally the sensor's bad,
Okay.
okay? If it's stuck rich or lean, it could be the sensor as well, but it also could mean the car is actually running rich or running lean, okay? So let's say we looked at the oxygen sensor voltage on a scan tool. You shouldn't really be able to pick a number because it's constantly changing, okay? There's not one number that it's gonna be.
Okay.
It should be constantly changing so fast that you couldn't even read one of the numbers, okay? Let's say you take and create a vacuum leak, okay? Introduce air into the engine that's not supposed to be there. That voltage on that oxygen sensor should immediately drop, okay? Real low.
Okay.
Or if you give it more fuel, let's say you spray a little brake cleaner into it while it's in the engine air intake, something like that, that voltage should go rich immediately, okay? That'll tell you if the sensor's actually working. You can test it that way, okay? Create a vacuum leak or give it a little extra fuel. You'll see that voltage go high and low, and if it does that, the sensor's probably working right, okay? But again, it will set a code if it's not. I'm just going into different designs here. They also do have a hole in them somewhere typically. So what that does is it lets just air in there. It kind of does a comparison. That gets plugged up, obviously the sensor's not going to work properly. As you can see, here is your scale for rich and lean as well, right? 0, 1 volt, or they're using millivolts because that's what the reading typically is. But pretty much the top of the line is going to be 1 volt or 1,000 millivolts, okay? But it should constantly be going back and forth, rich, lean, right? Now you got to remember one thing on the oxygen sensor. This is strictly for sensor 1, for your engine control. Your catalyst monitoring oxygen sensor should have a very slow changing voltage, which we'll see in some waveforms here. Okay, how does the oxygen sensor report the level of oxygen in the exhaust?
Reading off of whether it's rich or lean.
Okay, so use the voltage signal to decide, right, whatever. Okay. Above 450 millivolts when its oxygen level is high. The oxygen sensor generates a low voltage. Low. Okay, this is the other thing you're probably going to ask some test questions, and it can be confusing until it kind of clicks. See where it says when the oxygen level is low, it generates a high voltage. If the oxygen content of the exhaust is low, it means it's running rich. So it's backwards of what you might think voltage-wise, okay? If the oxygen level is high, it generates a voltage below. So if it has a lot of oxygen in the exhaust stream, it's running lean, which means voltage is going to be low, okay? So you're going to get asked questions like that. So just kind of get that in your head that oxygen content of the exhaust, high means it's lean, low means it's rich, okay? Not enough oxygen, too much. It's kind of easy to put together if you think about it like that.
Well, I thought if the O2 sensor is lean, it has low volts, but now it's saying that it has
Well,
high
no,
volts.
that's why I'm bringing this up, so you don't get confused. Yes, if it's running lean, it means it's gonna have a low voltage, okay, below that 450 millivolts, okay?
Yeah,
but it also means that there's excess oxygen in the exhaust stream, meaning a lot of oxygen. That make sense?
yeah, but how does it say first that it has the low volts, but now it's saying that if it,
What they're doing is they're telling you difference between voltage and exhaust oxygen content in the exhaust stream. That's where you're confused, and that's why I'm bringing this up, so it makes sense to you.
okay, can you repeat what you just said, that small snippet of what you just said?
Okay. Let's do this. Which is high voltage. And remember, high voltage is just above 450 millivolts. This means that there is a low O2 in the exhaust stream, okay? If it's lean, it's going to be a low voltage. That means there is a high oxygen content in the exhaust stream, okay? Now does it make sense? Voltage is opposite of oxygen content. Are you confused? No?
I'm
Yeah.
very much confused, but,
Basically.
What's that? So, think about it this way. This is probably the easiest way to remember it, okay? Lean is low, rich is high. Think of it as how much money do you have? Are you running rich or are you running lean, right? If you're running lean, you don't have much money, right? If you're rich, you got lots of money.
yeah.
Voltage-wise,
Uh-huh.
the oxygen content in the exhaust is opposite. Okay, so think about this. If it's running rich, there's not enough oxygen in the exhaust stream. Not enough, okay? If there's too much oxygen in the exhaust stream, it's gonna be low, okay? Too much is lean, not enough is rich.
I got it now,
Does it-
thank
does
you.
it- does
It took a minute, but I got it there.
Yeah, it'll take a minute to click, but it will.
Don't erase that, I'm writing, I'm writing.
It's on page 904.
Is it,
Yeah, it says low voltage exhaust stream.
where,
On page 904.
well, that's what I already have, is that the lean is low volt and the high, I'm talking about what you have on the board.
Yeah, so again, this is opposite from this. If we're talking voltage, lean is low, rich is high.
Yeah,
If you're talking exhaust oxygen content in the exhaust stream, a lot means it's lean, a little bit means it's rich.
But exactly what he has up there is in the book that he was pointing out.
So what page is that on?
904, he was saying.
Those pictures?
Yeah, at the bottom it says exhaust lean, oxygen content
Okay.
high. Exhaust rich, oxygen content low, voltage low, voltage high.
Okay, got
I
it?
already have that, yeah,
That's
Okay.
exactly the same thing.
I already have that.
Those are the important things to remember is what I just told you, okay? Those are the things that will get you through test questions referring to car running rich or lean, high or low oxygen content, which is what that sensor is measuring, okay? So again, we're talking about sensor 1 right now, meaning the pre-cat oxygen sensor. When we get to the post-cat oxygen sensor or sensor 2, which is downstream, past the catalytic converter, things get a little bit different. But the only thing you really need to know is a post-catalyst oxygen sensor waveform should have slow movement, okay? Let's say, you know, the normal would be like this for the first one, the second one should be kind of lazy when you look at the pattern of the waveform. Okay. So oxygen sensor will change resistance in the presence of oxygen exhaust. Again, this is not something that you're gonna have to worry too much about. We just went through this, right? So those are the things you're probably gonna need to highlight or remember for sure. But unfortunately, when it comes to cars, not everybody does the same thing the same way, which we've talked about many times. For whatever you're working on, you'll be familiar with how it works after a while, but if you happen to be working someplace where they use oxygen sensors that change resistance with exhaust oxygen content instead of voltage, you'll figure that out as you're there, but again, this is, most of them are the zirconia type that we're gonna be using, all right? Okay, where is HO2S1? What is that? What does that stand for?
Sensor number 1.
Okay, what's the H? It just means it's heated, which they all are anyway, right? So heated oxygen sensor 1, that's all that is, okay? Where is it located? On a V-type engine, that sensor is going to be in the exhaust stream upstream of the catalytic converter on the side where number 1 cylinder is located. Okay, number 1 cylinder on a V configuration engine is not always right or left, or front or back, if it's front wheel drive. It's the bank where number 1 cylinder is located, okay? If you don't know that, you can look it up for the particular vehicle that you're working on. I think there's some place in here where I can show you that. Yeah. 907, I think it is. Okay, if you look at 907, it will give you, sensor configuration based on the engine. So again, number 1 cylinder is not always on the same side of every engine, okay? It might be on the right, it might be on the left, but it's always gonna be forward, okay? One of the front 2 cylinders toward the front of the engine, okay? So if you look at the pages here, the configurations here, you can see where each sensor is located. Again, sensor 2 is always going to be downstream, sensor 1 is always going to be upstream. Whether it's bank 1, bank 2, depends on where number 1 cylinder is located on that particular engine, which is the same thing you see here, okay? If you had this engine configuration, you wanted to know where bank 1, sensor 1 is, it's gonna be right here. This one, these pipes come together, you just have one cat here, so sensor 2 is gonna be located here. So this configuration, as you can see, has 3 oxygen sensors. No engines anymore have just 1, okay? Originally they did. But it's going to have at least 2, could have 3 or 4. Okay, what does the PCM use the oxygen sensor for? The upstream sensor is among the high authority sensors used for fuel control while the engine is operating in closed loop. We discussed that a minute ago, and what is closed loop? What if somebody said, what does closed loop mean, what would you say?
PCM adjustments, giving me lots of fun, regular fuel mixture.
When the engine is what? Okay, what status would it be in if the engine was cold?
Open.
Open. Okay. This would be engine startup or cold engine. This would be warmed up. Okay? This is gonna come up on test questions too. They're gonna try to see if you understand this. You might see a test question that says something like, an oxygen sensor is a high authority sensor used for fuel control during open loop operation. No, it isn't. The oxygen sensor does not mean anything for the vehicle in open loop. The PCM does not look at the voltage signal because it doesn't work until it's warmed up, okay? That's why this is important, okay? As I mentioned before, your fuel trim numbers are determined by the history of the oxygen sensor voltage over a period of time. You have short-term and long-term fuel trim, which we've talked about before. What do the fuel trim numbers mean? This is all related to your oxygen sensor. You're gonna have to know what fuel trim numbers mean, which we talked about before. If it's a negative number, it means that the PCM is subtracting fuel to compensate for a rich condition. If it just has a number, it's a positive number, okay? So if your, let's say your short-term fuel trim was 8%. What does that mean?
It's using 8% extra fuel to make up for the
Okay.
rich airflow.
It's adding 8% fuel because this is a positive number because it doesn't have a negative sign in front of it, okay?
I thought you said negative.
Means it's adding 8% fuel to compensate for a little bit of a lean condition. This is not a problem, okay? If you were running 8% on your fuel trim, it's nothing to worry about. It's almost never gonna be perfect, okay? But once this number starts getting to 15, 16, 17%, you got a problem, okay? So if it said that, is it running rich or lean? Is this a rich or lean condition? Not enough to work, let's make it 18%. That way it's a problem. Is it running rich or lean?
It's negative.
Will that be lean?
It's running what?
Lean. So it's rich.
It's subtracting fuel. It's running rich, okay? This is one of the reasons the oxygen sensor chapter is big. There's a lot to learn about it. It's basic and it's easy once you get these things down, okay? That's why I'm not going into these intricate details and technical stuff about how it does what it does. Just gonna tell you what you need to know. Anytime you're diagnosing a fuel problem or an engine drivability problem, these numbers are gonna be a great diagnostic tool for you to know what's going on with the engine. You have to know this. Okay. PCM can use the oxygen sensor to test the EGR system. Sometimes we've talked about this before too. Some sensors will be used to test other sensors, okay? And some of them are used to back up other sensors. And they all do rationality checks and stuff like that because sometimes you'll get a code that says map sensor voltage not plausible based on the information from the other sensors, okay? All of these guys agree that the engine's doing what it's doing except for this guy over here. Well, maybe something's wrong with him, okay? If you get a black sooty deposit, it means the air fuel mixture is rich. If it's white, you got some sort of contamination, which normally doesn't happen anymore. Or you have, if you get coolant on the oxygen sensor, normally it's gonna be no good after that, okay? As we know by now, you can use a digital voltmeter to test just about any sensor on the car. But again, this is not something you're normally gonna do because What are you gonna do if you want to check the, oxygen sensor?
The, OBD scanner.
Scanner does everything for you, right? They're just telling you, yeah, you could do it that way, but the scan tool is gonna give you a much more accurate reading and diagnostic codes and all the stuff as well. So if you were going to use your meter, you could set it on DC volts. And if you used the minimum maximum function, it would record the highest and lowest, so you could tell if the sensor was going high and low like it's supposed to. Scan tool is the best.
For this, for the OBD sensors, can you activate the airbag from the scan tool?
No, absolutely not.
I saw a video this morning of a guy who had a OBD sensor doing something, and the airbag just went boom.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing, but no, you can't do that. Something went sideways on that, but, yeah. That's one thing that the scan tool does not have the ability to do is deploy airbag. That would be extremely dangerous and expensive. All right. If you are going to scope test it or look at the waveform, it's gonna be constantly changing, okay? On sensor 1. Okay, so this is a good, thing to pay attention to as well. Hopefully everybody's paying attention to what's going on in here. Upstream, downstream waveform. You know, a waveform is simply a graphic display of what voltage is doing. Okay? Instead of reading a number, you can actually look at it as a waveform. This would be which sensor?
Sensor 1.
What sensor would this be if it was working right?
1,
1, right?
2.
What does the downstream or sensor 2 oxygen sensor do? Here's your catalytic converter. This is the exhaust flow. This is the engine. Right? This is the tailpipe. Exhaust is flowing this way. Sensor 1, sensor 2. This one is for fuel control. The waveform should look like that, should constantly changing. This one should be kind of slow and kind of lazy compared to that one. If this starts to look like this, what's wrong?
Catalytic's not working.
Catalytic converter is bad, right? Okay? Oxygen storage capacity of the catalytic converter is compromised, not working properly. Voltmeter testing, DC volts, using minimum maximum function, you're going to see that on the waveform. Again, 0 to 1 volt or 1,000 millivolts. This is what you should see. That should be rapidly changing while the engine's running, okay? 3 ways to test a multimeter scan tool, scope. Okay, this is the post-catalyst oxygen sensor that we're going to go to now. This is what they call sensor 2, okay? Sensor 2 is always going to be the catalyst monitoring, okay? The one downstream, farthest down in the exhaust stream, okay? Past the catalytic converter. It's to monitor converter efficiency. Not so much for fuel control, okay? If the converter is working correctly, the oxygen content after the converter should be fairly constant. which is why you don't get that quick changing voltage. It's also used to modify the amount of fuel delivered to the engine to allow the converter to work efficiently. Again, it does have a little bit of effect on fuel control, but not like the sensor one does. Another good picture for waveforms. Sensor 1 or pre-cat, this is sensor 2, catalyst monitoring. If you get sensor 2 starts looking like this, the catalytic converter is bad. Okay? Catalyst efficiency low. This is where you get your P0420, P0430. Usually that's bank 1, bank 2. Usually this is 1 and this is 2 for the codes, okay? If it only has 1 bank, it's probably going to be P0420 for low catalyst efficiency. All right, what is a wideband oxygen sensor? Anybody heard that term before?
No.
Wideband oxygen sensor? Sometimes it's called an air-fuel ratio sensor, lean air-fuel sensor, something like that. The need for a more stringent exhaust emission standard required more accurate fuel control than provided by a traditional oxygen sensor. The wideband is capable of supplying air-fuel ratio information to the PCM over a much broader range. This design makes it easier to heat and allows closed loop operation in less than 10 seconds. So when you start your car, if you're looking at a scan tool and you hadn't driven your car since the day before, so the engine was cold, right? If you were looking at a scan tool, start the engine up and look at it, it's going to say open loop. With this type of sensor, it should say closed loop within 10 seconds. So they get it closed loop as quick as possible. Okay, as soon as you turn the ignition on, that heater circuit's activated in that oxygen sensor. All right. Again, technical stuff that you're not gonna use really anyway. We've been through this before. Okay, as far as scan tool diagnostics go, PCM will perform the test to identify the faults. Digital meter testing normally. You could do that again for voltage or to check the heater circuit resistance, something like that, but most of your testing is going to be done with a scan tool anyway. I don't think we have to go through that. Okay, pattern failures. Most failures will set a diagnostic trouble code, check engine light, malfunction indicator light. However, one type of failure that may not set is when the voltage from the heater circuit leads into the nurse cell. This voltage causes the engine operating extremely lean. May not set a code. Okay. All right. I'm sure we'll be going back over this before the end of this because, again, this is something that is important. Rick is here? You sure? Okay.
time the brakes get hot, they start getting warm, right?
If they overheat, they will, yeah.
Is it when?
It's normal for them to get hot. I mean, they brakes do operate at a high.
How much would like the whole car to start shaking?
If you're wet now?
The whole car's like shaking, like.
Yeah,
you
the whole
press
car
it.
shakes when you hit brake, yeah, the rotors are warped.
Is it because like they're just bouncing off the road? So like one side is like pushed out.
So what it does is it causes uneven surface, so the pads are actually doing this really quick.
So when they get back, they get warm, it's just normal then after that?
It's never supposed to do that.
Like when is normal? It doesn't do that at all?
Right. It should just be smooth braking if the brakes are right. You shouldn't feel any shake, no vibration of the steering wheel, nothing.
So it just does it when it's hot, it just pushes it out.
The rotors are warped, most likely front. Are these people too noisy next door? Okay. They get to chattering, don't they?
Still working?
You ready? All right.
Ready?
Yep.
A P0131 DTC is being discussed. Technician A says that an exhaust leak upstream of heated oxygen sensor, bank 1, oxygen sensor could be the cause. Technician B says that an extremely rich air fuel mixture could be the cause. Who was right? Technician A only.
A only. Anybody not get A?
No.
All right.
Number 2, Only a poorly running engine, the wideband oxygen sensor can be quickly checked by C, disconnecting the sensor connector.
Okay, everybody get C for 2?
Caesar.
Hopefully.
Number 3, when the air flow ratio is expressed as lambda number less than 1 indicate rich.
Uh-huh. A is good for number 3.
AP 0173 is being discussed. Definition A says effective either safety could be the cause. Definition B says the performance sensor could be the cause. What do you think is correct? C?
C is good.
Where is sensor 1, bank 1 located on the B diagram? D.
I'm sorry.
D as in dog.
D is in dog.
Yeah.
On the same bank where number 1 cylinder is and before the cap. That is correct.
Which begins with closed loop, following force converter HO2S scope pattern activity is seen. What does this indicate? B,
Bad converter.
back.
Okay. Why is it bad converter? You're right, but why is it?
Because on the diagram that you showed earlier, it was like.
Jumping up and down too frequently.
Should look more lazy.
Oh, it's because it's jumping in voltage.
Yeah, it's too much activity, right? Yeah, okay. All right.
When testing an oxygen sensor using a DSO, how quickly should the voltage change when either propane is added to the intake stream or when a vacuum is cooled?
What is it?
Okay?
A? Quicker than that.
It's B.
Less than 100 milliseconds.
Is that now on page 110?
It should be on 910.
Oh, okay, is it where it says a good oxygen?
Yeah, it's in the tech tip, in the,
Oh, it's in the tech tip?
yeah, that box there where it says propane sensor test. Propane is just the same thing as adding fuel to it, it's forcing the sensor to go rich.
Yeah.
A vacuum leak is forcing it to go lean. Okay.
High O2 sensor voltage could be due to a lean exhaust.
Okay, number 8, where are we at, 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
B, lean exhaust.
Hmm?
Lean is low voltage, rich is high voltage, so a high oxygen sensor voltage is going to be rich.
I was looking at oxygen buffer.
It might take a minute for all of this to collect in your brain, but once it does, you should be fine. We'll go over it enough times that you'll never forget it.
Yep.
All right, where are we at, 9?
9. An
Okay.
oxygen sensor is being tested using a digital storage DSO. A good oxygen sensor should display how many switches per second. I don't know.
Don't know?
No.
Okay. First of all, what does it mean by switches?
Switching?
Going up and down.
Yeah.
Voltage.
Yeah. This is your baseline, right? Middle of your voltage range. Switches means going back and forth from rich to lean, okay? That's what it means by switches, okay? Okay. How many per second? 1 to 5. If you didn't get 8 for that, change your answer. All right, number 10.
In some hybrid electrical vehicles, the wide oxygen sensor can cause the PCM to enter close loop. It's
What is it?
B.
C?
B. Within
B.
10 seconds.
B is in boy?
Yeah, boy.
Oh, yeah.
It is not B.
As soon as
C?
the engine starts.
As soon as the ICE starts, what is the ICE? The internal combustion engine, so that stands for. You're only gonna see that acronym in a hybrid vehicle because it has 2 propulsion systems, that way you can't confuse the 2.
You got
Okay.
A, right?
It is A. All right. Because this is important, you are getting this one printed too. Okay? And because there's going to be test questions on this. Okay? This is the same chapter, this is just quiz B. So do this and we'll do it together as a class just like we did the other one. Because these things are stuff you're gonna have to know.
Are we doing this one together or are we?
Yep.
doing- Okay.
First, you're gonna do it by yourself, just like we did the other one.
Oh, that's-
Then we're gonna go over it together, just like we did the other one. Didn't take long for our new machine to run out of stuff, did it? People started attacking that thing. and
Oh.
just-
Oh, I didn't
Doesn't have any
see it.
more?
Yeah, it's out of probably half of the stuff.
I had to close my card. I can't even go in there and use it.
What happened?
I had to close my card. Somebody got
Oh,
somebody
fraud?
into my card and took $600 out of my account. So I had to close it. Reported it was stolen. And apparently that's been happening since December. So they gotta give me all my shit back.
It's
Give me my card.
it's common.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I just had to go through the same thing.
The
I was
worst part
looking
is I
through
couldn't
the,
even go to
I
the
was
bank to
looking-
pull money out.
at my, charges on my card, and I didn't recognize one of them, and I called them up. They said, okay, we'll cancel a card. They sent me a new one within 2 days.
I've been waiting almost a week and a half now.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I'm saying.
Who's your bank?
Wells Fargo.
Oh, no.
They, It's happened before and it took like 2 days.
Yeah, I got my new
But I've
card
been
in 2
waiting
days.
since, not last Saturday, the Saturday before that. Obviously, you know,
Was it
weekends
a credit
don't
card or
count.
debit card?
Debit card.
That's why.
Obviously, weekends don't count, you know, cause it's not a
Oh, yeah, and
business.
it's a holiday.
Exactly, Memorial Day too.
Oh,
So-
Here's a little tip. If you're gonna use a card, if you have one, if you can, always use a credit card. Because you're using the bank's money, not yours.
Actually.
That way, if something happens, you can dispute the claim. If you use a debit card, that's your money. It's coming out of your account, and it takes a lot more to get it back. So, always use a credit, I never use a debit card,
You know
ever.
what's good too though?
Ever.
A prepaid card, like
Mhm,
Cash
yeah,
App.
uh-huh,
I
yeah.
like
Yeah.
using that for
Yeah.
like to buy online or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cause you can lock that real
Yeah.
quick.
I mean, you could do the same with your debit card on the app, just lock it.
Oh.
I do that sometimes to budget my money. Like I'll like set this much, you know, to
And then have it-
spend. And then when I get
Not
to a
letting
point
you
where I don't
spend
wanna spend
anymore
anymore, I
after that.
lock it. So if I try to scan it, it doesn't let me do it. I'm like, oh yeah, my fault, never mind.
Well, if you have a savings account,
No, I have a savings account too. I'd like to budget, well, I put half of whatever I make in my savings, and then I take half of what I took from that half in my checking, and I budget that. I don't spend more than
That's
that.
what I tell my
Yeah,
kids,
right.
that's
Huh?
You have
excellent.
a credit card?
Nah, I need to open one soon though. I'm doing way too
No,
fucking
what I
late.
do is cause I have no money in my checkings account, right? So all my money's in my savings and I just use my credit card.
No,
So
I need to open up a credit card soon.
So if someone uses my debit card, it's gonna be declined right away, because I have nothing in it.
Who got A?
Nope.
Anybody got A?
See. A or one?
Or one, my fault. It's catalytic converter.
Hmm?
C.
Yeah,
What?
or one is C.
My fucking legs hurt.
Everybody done? Yeah, no?
Yeah.
This work is an air intake.
I'm sorry, what's that? Some people will do anything. A Pringles tube for your air intake.
I've done that before.
Have you really?
No.
Oh, she was just saying, wow.
They connected the map sensor.
Yeah.
Have you seen those little Amazon turbo things? Where like they're little plastic turbos, but you connect them to the battery. So every time you press a button, it makes like a little fake turbo flutter noise.
No, I can honestly say what you meant.
Yeah, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah, kinda don't. Okay. Did anybody say they were still working on this? No? Okay.
Alright. The voltage output of a zirconia, is that how you say it?
Yep.
Zirconia oxygen
Yeah.
sensor from the exhaust stream is lean. Excess oxygen is relatively low, close to 0 volts.
Anybody else get C for that one? Yeah? Who else? Okay, now, you notice they are giving you this too,
Yeah, excess oxygen.
okay? Exhaust stream is lean. Going to be, and
Test.
you might see that one again. In fact, you might see all 3 of those tomorrow. Because tomorrow's Wednesday already. We gotta bust through all these chapters in 2 days.
We do.
Nothing to it.
And what page was number one on again? What was it on?
What was the answer? You tell me what the answer was. You should know this. What's that?
903. 903.
Thank you.
Number 2. A wide band oxygen sensor heater can draw how much current amperes? Don't know. D, dog.
Yep. You're gonna see that one tomorrow too.
Alright.
And you're gonna see this one tomorrow too. What's the answer to number 3, Charles?
Is it B?
Is it what?
I think it's A. A on.
A only, he said. Okay, an oxygen sensor can have 1, 2, 3, or 4 or more, what? Not 1 anymore, but that is true, it could. So A is good. Now, technician B, let's see if he knows what he's talking about. If the exhaust has little oxygen, the voltage of the sensor will be close to 1 volt. And close to 0 if there is high oxygen content. Is he right?
No.
Yeah.
They weren't sure of it. Is that right?
Yeah.
You're right, it is.
Okay, so both.
They're both right. Yes, they are.
A low of the
Lean. B.
The low 2 voltage could be due to a,
It's voltage.
low means it's rich.
I'm sorry?
If it's low, that means it's rich.
No, remember the word association. This is easy. Low is lean. Yeah, low voltage lean, high voltage rich. Simple. If you put it together like that in your head, you'll never forget it, okay? Low is lean, low voltage lean, B for number 4.
Number 5.
The oxygen sensor signal is used by PPM to fine tune the air fuel mixture.
Yes, that's what it's for. It fine tunes that air fuel mixture.
Ignition A says that a wide band oxygen sensor, also called the lean air fuel sensor, can detect air fuel ratios from as rich as 10 to 1 to as lean as 23 to 1. Ignition B says that the oxygen sensor signal determines fuel trim, which is used to tailor the air fuel mixture from the catalytic converter, which technician is correct. C.
Okay, that's a mouthful, right? And what is it?
Both.
Both of them, yeah, okay, all right. All right,
Up to.
I think we did this one, didn't we?
DTC is being discussed. Type A says that a defective feeder circuit could be the cause. Type B says that a contaminated sensor could be the cause.
Both.
Which type is correct?
Yeah, I think we did that with both of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, just the opposite of question number 6,
Rich, I got it
or
right this time.
whatever that was.
I got this question last time too. On the last test.
High voltage, rich exhaust. Okay. Number 9.
Technician A says that an oxygen sensor produces a voltage output signal based on the oxygen content of the exhaust stream. Technician B says that if the exhaust has little oxygen, the voltage of the oxygen sensor will be close to 0 volts. Who is right?
A.
A.
Okay, where are we at, 9?
9.
Yeah, yep. 9 is A.
What does the post or downstream oxygen sensor measure? Is it A? Or not?
I think it's B, no? H2O is water, no?
Behind the cover.
Wait a minute, what?
Is
H2O.
a post or downstream oxygen sensor.
Is that a typo?
HO2 measure. Amount of oxygen in front, amount of oxygen in front.
I would say it's B.
What does the post or downstream oxygen sensor measure?
It's what comes out of the back of the catalytic.
Oxygen behind the catalytic converter.
Does that mean water, or is it trying to say HO2? Heated oxygen.
I don't know if that's a typo or not, but maybe it isn't. Maybe they are asking the amount of water, or they could have just messed it up. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter because none of those are right anyway. Amount of oxygen behind catalytic converter. Okay. Next chapter is fuel system. Let's go to the chapter quiz, so we'll take 15-minute break and get back. To start, fuel systems. Which is this one right here. All right.
Number 1 is C.
Number 1 is C, yes. Number 2 is A, we did that, right? Number 3 is B, lean, it's low. Okay, number 4 goes into a lot of stuff. But basically, you're using a digital multimeter with a minimum maximum function. Readings are minimum 78 millivolts, maximum 932 millivolts, average 442 millivolts. Tech A says the engine is operating correctly. Technician B says the oxygen sensor is skewed, meaning it's not working right, too rich.
Yeah, it's too much, right?
Which one's right?
It's too much. The maximum 32 is a big number.
Minimum reading was 78 millivolts, right? Maximum reading was what? 932 millivolts. Extremely low, extremely high. Is it supposed to do that?
No.
That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
What?
Remember, low, high.
Oh.
Exactly what it's supposed to do. Technician A says the engine operating correctly.
A is right.
It is. Technician B said it's skewed too rich. If it was, it would be hanging around the high voltage all the time. It would never go low. 78 millivolts, extremely low.
No, just A?
Just A. Oxygen sensor being tested with the DSO. We did that one, 1 to 5 switches per second. Okay, not that we need to know this, but a
1992.
wideband oxygen sensor was used on a Honda in
1992.
92. Wideband oxygen sensor is capable of detecting fuel ratios as rich and lean as 10 to 23 to 1. 10 being rich, 23 being lean. Oxygen sensor is used to fine tune the air fuel mixture. Dual cell number 9 may not cause a DTC to set. A for number 10.
What was that one?
7 is C.